Ahoy everyone, my name is Bobby Shortle and I'm here with Nick, Rocco, Scalia, and we are the Intrepid Filmographers. Every miniseries we chart a course through the full filmography of an under-discussed genre or journeyman filmmaker. In this expedition we do our best to try and be explorers, using our years of film knowledge to help guide us, but always being open to discovering new things about the medium we love so much. This week we continue our special expedition into the films of Peter Jackson, and today we are talking about his penultimate film and the second film in his Hobbit trilogy, The Desolation of Smaug, and find out if it's possible to indeed end a movie directly in the middle of a scene. Nick, how are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing good, and I do think we're going to have to talk about that a little bit.
Yes, I think we are. So yeah, we're here. We're on our next to last Peter Jackson episode, the next to last Hobbit episode, the one and the same. Like I said, we're talking about Desolation of Smaug. Last time we talked about, obviously, Unexpected Journey, and I think we both were kind of like, liked this more than I remember liking it. A lot of the problems I had back in 2012 or whatever, when I saw this for the first time, I didn't have as much here, while still sort of highlighting its weaknesses that we still thought it had, and so I say this only because these movies, even more so than The Lord of the Rings, are so much feeling like one story just chopped somewhat randomly, it feels like, into three movies, that a lot of the prep stuff we talked about and a lot of all that stuff, we kind of laid the groundwork for that in the first episode, and we're not going to be doing a lot of that here because it's basically all of the same, sort of information, going into it. So, this discussion will be much more focused on, how it works as the second part of a trilogy, and, I'm sure we'll get into more of what it means both positively and negatively for their decision on how to treat this material. But if you really want the basis of all of that, you have to go back to the last episode and listen to that, just so everybody knows, because we're not going to be diving into all of the Guillermo del Toro, blah, 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 whatever, because when we get to this movie, really, we have kind of left behind, I think, any of the vestiges of what del Toro was sort of working on and prevising. And we're in purely Peter Jackson land, I think, when we're in this movie. Whereas you can look at the first movie and go, that Goblin King definitely looks kind of like a Guillermo del Toro type of creation. That none of that exists here. So, we're going to be talking all about that, Desolation of Smaug, and then next time we'll be talking about the Battle of Five Armies. But I guess kicking it off, Nick, I remember back when I saw this in the theater, I liked it way more than An Unexpected Journey. Again, but I have not seen it probably since that year that it came out in theaters. So I was going to this one being I wonder how I'm going to feel about it this time. How did you feel about this back in, 2013 or whatever, when you saw it for the first time?
I think we talked about this a little last time. I was pretty high on these movies the first time around. I remember being very excited for this to come out. The first Hobbit and Unexpected Journey, that movie won me over. And as we talked about last episode, it actually did on the second viewing. I think it's only my second time seeing it for all of these. I'd seen the original trilogy, obviously, a bunch of times, but and it had been a while. But I remember being really excited for this and being really pleased with it. And particularly the last, hour of it or so. Mm-hmm. I remember, I think it took me a while to warm up to An Unexpected Journey. I was primed for this one. I was liking the way this series was going at the time. And so this one, I was kind of on board, right from the get-go. And weirdly now, I feel like some of the early going in this movie is not as good as I remember it. But the later stuff that I always had fond memories for, well, we'll get to my take on it. But yeah, I was cautiously optimistic, or maybe just straight up optimistic going into this the first time. And it basically delivered everything I wanted it to.
Yeah. I mean, so yeah, back when this first came out in the theater, I definitely was going into it not with crossed arms, because as we discussed last time, I did like An Unexpected Journey, but I was a little bit worried about this middle section, especially because of the structure of making this into three movies. What was going to be in this, what wasn't, how were they going to begin it and end it and bookend it and all of those kind of things, right? It was also the one that I was thinking would be the most difficult because, from a book perspective, there isn't as much action in this section of the book as there is in the beginning and end sections of the book.
And yet this movie has no shortage of action or incident. So
it's all action in this movie, which is very surprising and interesting, right? So I go into it and I'm and I was, from the first movie, I we talked about last time. I liked all the things that people didn't like about it, right? And was like, the singing and sort of the whimsy and all that kind of stuff.
Me too.
And then and was kind of turned off by just like the pacing of it, and how the thing we talked about how it felt drawn out in a lot of places, right? So going to this, I was like, I don't know what this is going to be. So my arms weren't crossed, but I was kind of like, I'm worried that like this could be where it all spins off into, something bad, right? And I remember back then I saw it, I was like, that was a damn fun adventure movie. And I am excited now for what's going to come next. It feels like he's finding his footing, right? He's figuring it out as the movies have gone along. Obviously they're all shot at the same time, but he gets another extra year to work on this as far as like post-production and all that kind of stuff, and probably shaping it and figuring out what works and didn't work and all that kind of stuff. I was like, okay, we're on the right track. And obviously we'll talk about what happens in the third movie when we get that next time. But, so sitting down this week to watch this movie, we're coming off Unexpected Journey, which I liked a lot more the second time around, watching it this time, like 10 or 13 years later or whatever. So I was like, man, I revert back to, I'm a little bit worried that I'm going to watch this movie, which I really liked back then, and be like, oh no, it actually is not good. I was just looking for like the wrong things back then. Sort of like a Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith, like sort of moment where back then I was like, this is so much better. And then I watch it now and I'm like, oh God, why would I think this was better? Like, then, Heavy Report, I watched this time and I still think this is a fantastic adventure film. And I think it's one of those things where it sort of shows you that Jackson is better at doing this kind of stuff than almost anybody else, with the caveat that there are big issues with this movie, mainly driven by the fact that it's the whole structure of what they're trying to do with these three movies. And also, I think a continuing problem with the Thorin character being somebody who, like, it's really just hard to get behind in any sort of, real way. But I think it does alleviate some of the things we talked about last time, which I didn't like, was like, there are a couple dwarfs in this one that I think you come out being like, these are now characters that I remember and have like a opinion on, and we'll talk about, I think some of that's for good and some of that's for ill, but I think like, at least now I'm like, okay, I can see I don't know if Jackson decided this, in sort of post-production and edited started editing out like more stuff to focus down on a couple of people, or that was just the way the scripts had been kind of written out and borne out. But the decision to sort of like just background most of them other than a couple of main ones, I think does help with the character stuff in this movie. And of course, we'll talk about
a lot more moments with them and with Bilbo. And they also, we know more about them than their names this time around, which is nice. So yeah, those shots of them walking over a mountain together are like, we get a sense of who they actually are when they're doing that. And it's not just, wouldn't it be cool to get this group? There's a great shot, they all kind of, not all of them actually, just they separate here also, which actually, as much as I love the Fellowship, in this trilogy as well as the other one, when they're all together and they're on the road together, which they are through a lot of this, and I love that about it. Yeah. The fact that they are separated and then they kind of get to do their own things, I think that helps that a lot. So, you're talking about issues with the structure in this movie. I think that's a choice. And again, that might come from the book. Speaking out of school, as always,
separating them, that's not in the book. That is something he created, I think, on purpose to do exactly what you're talking about. Okay, well, then it's a great choice, and I think it works really, really, really well. And I think also helps with some of the other issues this movie has. Can I just lay my cards on the table, though? Yeah. I'm like giddy about it. I love this movie. That's great. I'm happy to hear that. I really, I kind of went into it with a little trepidation too, because as I said the last time, there has been kind of a backlash to this trilogy, and watching An Unexpected Journey the last time, as much as I liked it even now, I do feel like some of the criticisms are pretty valid. And early going in this, the Mirkwood sequence, which we're going to talk about, I got to that. I remember liking that the first time, and this time it didn't work for me at all. And I was like, oh, this is where the thing just kind of goes downhill. And then like literally everything after that, I was like, this is, it's exactly what you said it is. It's just a wonderful adventure movie, like really has that spirit of adventure about it that I think movies don't really have at all anymore. It's very, very hard to find that. The thrill of discovery and like new
situations and new kinds of ways to use these characters. And, they're crossing a lot of distance, which is a thing that I've talked about. I love in these movies so much. I think this one really captures that really nicely, a lot like Fellowship does. This one reminds me a lot of Fellowship, which is strange because you'd think the earlier one in this trilogy would be the analog to that. But yeah, just sequence after sequence, I was just like, oh yeah, this is really good here. And I remember this, and I remember really liking this, and it still holds up. I also think we talked a lot the last time about the CGI and the fact that, the major adversaries in these movies that were beautifully realized with practical effects and makeups and things in the original trilogy. Now we're seeing them in CGI, and there is a lot of CGI in this movie, but I think it's actually really, really good CGI. And I think what it does is it frees Peter Jackson up to create some really, really stunning, amazing action sequences that are, like this feels, the vibe that I got throughout this was like, this is a quasi live action Pixar movie. Like it has that like very kind of bouncy sort of, almost silent comedy, Buster Keaton-y sort of feel of like an Incredibles or I'm trying to think of some of my other favorite like Pixar, like some of the Toy Story movies do that, like where they're these like extended chase sequences, like Toy Story 3 has a couple of them. This feels like that with some human characters kind of composited into it. And, and it is that. But I was thinking about like these movies come out after Avatar. And literally Avatar, that entire film is that, right? I mean, there are parts of Avatar where everything is computer generated. Even the protagonist is a CGI creation, a very good one. Not that those movies look bad, but I mean, I can't really knock this movie for not having that sort of tactile, gritty feel of the original trilogy, because there's so many amazing things to look at here, and they actually look good, right? Like there's a lot of thought and care and craft put into what this imagery, how this appears. And I think that all comes to a beautiful culmination in the Smaug sequence, when we're down in the room full of gold and we meet Smaug for the first time. All of that stuff is phenomenal. This is, it's everything I wanted out of it in some sense. And I just, the way it kept delivering, I was just like, wow, this movie is genuinely, legitimately great.
Yeah. So I agree with you almost 100%. I think I probably liked it a little bit less than you did, only because there were just some things that frustrated me, because I was loving it so much. And then these things would crop up where I'd be like, come on, like a couple of things here and there. I'm interested to know what
those are. Yeah, because I found myself being frustrated by very little of it, and I can be pretty critical about these things. So.
Yeah, no, you definitely can. I think I agree with you on the CGI for the most part. I still think the orcs and stuff, I just don't think they don't look as good as the movies that came out 10 years earlier, and that's unforgivable to me when you're talking about movies like this. If you're going to do CGI for the orcs, they got to look as good as the ones you did in the original ones, or just stop. What are you doing? Just put people in costumes, like that kind of things. Also, some of the stuff that's like, just some of like the beginning of this movie is a very clear thing of this, where it's like you start with that in the amazing Bree prancing pony set.
Oh, I love that sequence.
Right,
yeah.
Looks fantastic. Right, you get. And it looks so good and real. And then the first shot you get of Bilbo, you're like, well, he's standing on a freaking green screen, and they're like, whatever, And then the next shot is like them walking across beautiful mountains and real vistas. And then they flip back again to like, now they're on a green screen with a couple of trees built around them, or whatever. And I'm just like, that whiplash to me is when you get into, when I bump against the way it looks. I think it's boring for us to keep talking about like the CGI problems. We talked about that a lot in the other movie, and I think the stuff that still that bothered me there still bothers me here. But I will say, when he's crafting sequences that you could not do practically,
that's exactly what I mean. Yeah,
they look amazing. Like the Smaug stuff is unbelievable looking, and like I think you calling out the animation stuff and Buster Keaton stuff and stuff like that is so apt, because unlike Lord of the Rings in a lot of ways, this is where it's different from Lord of the Rings, where I think they do embrace sort of like the Hobbitness, or like the almost like children's book aspect of it, is the barrel sequence, even the spider sequence. All these are things that are driven by like a fun concept that they're.
Yes.
He doesn't care
exactly.
if it's like.
They are cartoonish, but like
real,
in a very good way. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. So I really like that about the way those scenes are done, and I think that's when this thing is at its best. And we'll talk about the Mirkwood stuff, because I actually like that stuff, and we'll get into it a little bit. I think like And what I like about this too is that, and again, I don't know if this was a script thing or like just driven by reshoots and post-production, but look, we talked about this last time. The story is just full of like 15 people walking from one place to another. A little something happens and then they walk to another place and they're just constantly walking. That's all they're doing is just walking. And it's very hard to make that dramatically interesting. And in the first movie, you get that vibe, which is what the book is like, which is just like, we walk and then there's a little vignette and then we walk and there's a little vignette and they don't really relate to one another in any way. Not one isn't driving the other. It's just, we got to get from one place to another. And we're just like going to these like stops along the way where something hopefully fun happens that will be entertaining in the movie. In this one, I think he did such a good job. And some of the stuff is because he had to change it, which I think was the right thing to do, which is the scene, the little things we're getting into are directly related to the next thing that's going to happen. And they're being driven by stuff that's happening in the story other than just we're walking from here to here, you know? And I think you said it reminds you of Fellowship. It's because I do feel like he's repeating some Fellowship beats here, right? In I think very specific ways. He's kind of flipping them in places, but the Mirkwood stuff is very much like the Lothlorien stuff in a lot of ways. You know, obviously not the like them being captured and stuff, but like just like the vibe of it in a lot of ways. And then like the Morgul blade thing is directly from, you know, Fellowship. But I do think it propels the movie a lot more. So I agree with you in many of what you're saying. And we'll go through like the things I think were bothering me as we go.
Yeah, the pacing here, before I forget that, I mean, this movie's about 2 hours, 40 minutes, something like that. This one's like over in a blink. I mean, it's like that. Yeah. The momentum that this movie builds up is incredible. And it does not, I mean, the one thing you don't get a lot of here are those quiet moments, and I do really like those quiet moments, but we had a lot of those in An Unexpected Journey, and, you know, now we are very much on the road with these characters. I do think the stakes are really well defined here, as you were saying, and the plot is pretty tightly structured for what this is, even though it's kind of the middle chapter in a thing, which is always a very tough thing to do. You know, there's I've never ever been close to bored in this movie. And I think it really keeps things going at a really perfect kind of clip for what this is. And this is what Jackson, that also prevents you from thinking too much about
exactly
stuff, you know?
Exactly. And this is what Jackson's so good at when he's really cooking, is like that, exactly what you're talking about. It's just everything is imaginative, everything is interesting, everything is driven by characters, all that kind of stuff is all present here in a lot of ways.
And it's never repetitive, right? I mean, I think one of the issues with King Kong was that, like, yes, it's kind of like this, and the pacing was very similar to this, and it had a lot of very similar scenes. I think the Mirkwood stuff here is very much like the Skull Island, you know, the giant insects attacking from everywhere scene, which was too much in that movie because we'd kind of seen that already. Here, it's like, you know, it's just not just topping itself, but doing something very different. Like each one of these action sequences is distinct, very distinct from the ones that came before it and the ones that come after it. I can't believe how impressed I was with this. I finished it at work this morning. I went early. You know, we have a pretty nice TV in the studio at work, and I was like, I'll just watch the last hour of the movie there. And I was just enthralled by it. I was like, I hope nobody comes in because I'm having way too good of a time. I don't want to have to explain why I'm watching The Desolation of Smaug before my class starts.
I basically watched the last hour of this movie on my lunch break as well. So this is a very similar situation. You know, let's go through the movie a little bit because I think this is a very easy movie to just go through because it's, like we talked about, just like a screaming plot. Like it's not like there's not like a lot of stopping. So there's not a lot of big, like, you know, thematic concepts we're going to talk about here in this one. We're going to just drive through it. So the way it opens specifically, Jackson loves doing this, right? And we'll see it. We saw it in The Hobbit, the first movie. We saw it in the second one. There's going to be one in the third one. And we saw in each one of the Lord of the Rings movies, he kind of places this sort of like prologue to, I think, you know, kind of imbue a structure onto the story that isn't maybe necessarily there at all times, right? So he starts with this like scene between Gandalf and Thorin in Bree, right? So it's like basically we're seeing the scene before we first see Bilbo and Gandalf at the beginning of the first movie.
Yeah, and we're back at the Prancing Pony, which is nice. A little throwback to the original trilogy, which is a lot of fun. We get our Peter Jackson cameo like right off the bat.
Eat a carrot.
Got to be the quickest one. Yeah. Yes, he's always doing it. Like he never plays like a really enviable character in these movies.
Well, I'm pretty sure he's this guy in Fellowship because he's also a cameo in Bree and that as well.
True. That's
so
right.
It's probably just the same guy.
Just a local resident. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So like this scene, like well acted, like, you know, McKellen's good, Armitage is good in this scene.
There's a great moment before we get to any of that. Sorry, I love this movie so much. I'm already like, wait. So Thorin's being like spied on by a couple guys in the scene.
They're kind of approaching,
sitting in the bar and, you know, giving him the stink eye. And the one with the beard is like the scariest looking human being. There's this great shot of him kind of looking directly at the camera, and he's got these kind of bugging out sort of eyes. And I was like, that guy's terrifying. I don't think he's actually going to be important or a character here, but I want to know more about him. Just a really great choice of casting, and I guess some just good direction, because he just, I found him very, very creepy.
Yeah. Well, you can definitely tell the moments, right, where Jackson is using more of his sort of like, you know, indie filmmaker, like scrappy guy, like ideas, which this scene definitely kind of feels like that, because it's like, let's just get a bunch of faces into this room and pack them in there and light it really dramatically, and that will do like 95% of the work for us, right? I think like the scene is fine. It's a little bit like once again, Jackson is really trying to give you the stakes, right? And the propulsiveness of this story. You know, like he's, brings up the dragon again. He also brings up the fact that like Thorin his life is in danger, and he's really got to get this done, or who knows what's going to happen. And the scene is fine to me. It does feel a little bit like it does feel to me like he's just trying to put structure on it, like, because the movie has no beginning, right? It's like they just kind of walk into a scene, so it's like we got to put something at the beginning that gives us like almost like a cold open, right? You'd see on like a TV show, right? That's what it feels like. It feels like a cold open, like
which
a quick
is interesting because The Two Towers does that. Like we just kind of start right in media res, and we're already on the road, and we don't get any scene like this there, and we're fine.
We do get the Gandalf falling through shadow and flame scene.
Oh, I guess that's
the beginning.
You're right. Yeah.
He's also doing that just to like, you know, give you a little start to that as well, right? He likes doing this. I totally get why he likes doing this. It's just for me, for here, it just feels like a thing where he's like, well, we always do this, so we've got to do like a scene. What can we do here, right? And the scene is fine, but I don't think it's very memorable. Like, I think the first 10 minutes of this movie, 15 minutes of this movie, is a little bit squishy because they're trying to figure out how to start the movie, right? Because to me, the movie really starts when they get to Mirkwood. That's really when the movie really starts. Like, we do this scene, then we do the orcs tracking them stuff, and then we do the Bjorn scene, who is like the half man, half bear. I think that the bear looks great.
Yep.
I think the CG on the bear looks great. It looks awesome. This scene, again, it's one of those things. The book is a children's book, right? So it's like, you're going to meet a man who can turn into a bear, and his house is big, and like, you know, we're going to whatever. And like, he's going to say some like, you know, wise words, and it's crazy because he's a animal man, so he shouldn't be so wise, you know, that kind of thing. I think in the movie, it feels like this should be in the extended version of the movie and not in like this version of the movie.
Really advance things much. I will say I do like the scene though. I like in this movie a lot. This one does a much better job, I feel like, than the Unexpected Journey of actually showing that dwarves are dwarves, meaning they're shorter than most other characters in this world. And when they put them up against this giant man bear pig, I really I enjoy those scenes when we see his house and the way it's like kind of this cathedral ceiling up over all their heads, and they look very tiny in there. There's a bunch of shots like that throughout this that I don't think in An Unexpected Journey, like, if you were my wife and you didn't care about these movies and you just turned on, one of them and you saw Thorin, you'd be like, okay, that's just your regular juk-jawed action hero guy. And you wouldn't have any sense. Like, I'd have to like elbow her and be like, oh, just so you know, he's a dwarf. And all these guys actually that are the same size as him, also dwarves. That Hobbit is also small because hobbits are smaller than humans too.
Right.
So I do think the proportions are a little bit more clearly defined here, which is nice.
Yeah. And then we get this scene with like the orcs, right, that are kind of like, we're passing off to like second in command orc, who's now going to follow our troop. Well, main orc
is, what's his name? Azok?
Azok is the Defiler, is like the main guy with the one arm, and Bolg is the guy. And
Bolg is his son?
I don't know who Bolg is. Bolg is actually, the funny thing is, Bolg is actually a named character in The Hobbit.
Okay.
So it's like, that is a named character. I don't know why they did this thing where they decided to have two of them. They didn't have Bolg be like the one main orc.
I don't know where I got that from, but I thought it was father and son.
It's possible. I have no idea. I have no clue.
Which could maybe make things a little bit more interesting, but if it's expressed, it's like, kind of hand waved away and we never think about it again.
It made me really think about, in
like how does an orc impress his orc dad?
Yeah, in Attack of the Clones, when Palpatine tells Dooku to poison Padme, and then Dooku, who was hired by Palpatine, hires a assassin who then hires a robot to like kill Palpatine, kill
Not quite
Padme.
as egregious as that. Yeah, like
no, but it's the same thing. It's just like, okay, we want to have a orc at Dol Guldur that we've seen before that seems imposing when Gandalf is there.
Sure.
So we need to create the situation where there's now two, and it's just one of these things where like the main failure of these movies to me is like the opposing force sort of like feeling like it is actually something that we should be worried about and concerned about, like the orc opposing force, not the Smaug, who I think is great, but I think just like this overarching threat that's happening.
I agree with that. I mean, these movies labor very, very hard to make this like a world-ending threat. It's Sauron coming back, which he does. We know that's going to happen.
Yeah.
And so these are, they're trying to do the prequel stuff, right? Of like just kind of setting up how that's all going to go down and where this sort of came from. And sometimes I think it does a good job of that, and sometimes I think it doesn't. But yeah, like my favorite scenes in this movie have nothing to do with that. Like
absolutely.
There's a great moment. We'll talk about it later. When we actually see Sauron in this movie.
Yeah.
It's incredible. It's really, really well done. It might be my favorite image of that character in any of these movies.
Yeah, really good. That stuff I think is really good. Yeah.
Beautifully realized, but like the idea that, I like a smaller story here, right? Like I want this to be about the dwarves reclaiming their homeland, but these movies are like, no, but wait, like this is going to affect everyone. And, it's just not always very convincing. I agree with that. And I think that's because it's laboring so mightily to get that point across. It takes us away from, just getting to know these characters. And like the scene we talked about last time where Bilbo basically explains why he's going along with this and what he wants for them. That's all I need. That's enough. That's not enough to set up the battle of the 5 armies, but that's enough for me.
No,
and
no,
it's
absolutely
unfortunate.
not.
Like I could almost see just a pared down version of these with none of that.
Yeah. And I think, I think the problem or the sort of struggle even in my head is that, like we talked about, the stuff where Gandalf is actually doing that stuff, I think is really well done and actually does give me a sense of like, this is like important, quote unquote, in air quotes. But the problem with doing that stuff, even though it's good and feels important, when you put it up against just like 14 dudes wanting to go back to their house, it makes that stuff feel less important. And you're not spending as much time with those characters to get to know those characters and do whatever you want to do with those characters.
That's what I was saying. Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, but anyway, those 2 scenes happen. The Bjorn scene, like, what he says is fine. Like, and I like this idea. I like the general, like, Tolkien thing of, like, there are these creatures that exist and these people that exist who, like, they're not really involved with, like, these comings and goings and, like, he says thing where like, I don't like dwarfs, but I hate
orcs even more. Yeah.
More. Yeah. And here you can take these horses or whatever, I like that. Like they're the characters like that. And those are strewn all about, right? The Ents are kind of like that. Right. You've got in the books, you've got like someone like Tom Bombadil, who's a character who's like that. And I like that Tolkien has those people who it's like, because it makes the world feel more real, right? That there are like these people who just like are not part of these big stories. They just kind of are living their lives. And some of them are really old and they just are, been there forever. And like, to them, it's like, I've seen this go back and forth a million times, and I'm also turned into a giant bear. So like I have my whole other business going on, But again, it just feels, again, if you were taking these 3 movies and making them 2 movies, and you were picking and choosing what like vignettes you wanted to do, and like, this was part of the first movie and you had taken out some other vignettes, it might feel more impactful. But for the beginning of this movie, it just feels like, this is a scene that should have happened like midway through a movie, right? Where they get to like a place of rest where they can regroup and figure out what their next steps are, right? But instead it's the very beginning of the movie. And so it feels like it's not time to rest. Like it's just starting. Like we're supposed to be just going at this point, not resting. So I think that's why it feels a little bit superfluous. And then Gandalf is kind of like, okay, here's the elf forest. Peace, guys. And this is where Mirkwood. So You said, or at the beginning, at the top of the show, you said the Mirkwood stuff you really liked it the first time. You didn't like jive with this so much this time. Are you talking about like this like sort of spider section or the next half with the elves?
No, it's the spider section, because I remember really liking that scene. There's a great moment where, it's this creepy forest. I think Peter Jackson does a great job with those, and there's this really nice thing. Before we get done with Bjorn, one of the things I love about these movies is the sense of like ominousness about things, like things that we haven't seen yet. There's this great bit with Bilbo early on where, the orcs are pursuing them, and then he sees Bjorn and he says something to the dwarves like, well, there's something else out there. And we don't really know what he's talking about. And I always get that little chill up my spine, and I love when movies are able to do that, to make me like, oh, I'm not sure if I want to, because I've seen like every movie ever, horrific things, giant, terrible, ominous things in movies. But every time a movie is just convincing like that, where it's like, there is something very big and very evil and very threatening out there that I haven't seen yet. And, you're kind of anticipating what the reveal of that is going to be. I love that. This movie does that twice. There's a great moment later on where, something about... he talks about going down into Smaug's chamber or whatever, I don't know what I'm going to find down there or something. I was like, oh yeah, we don't know. I mean, and we know what's going to be down there. We've seen it already, but still the anticipation that's built there, I think is really wonderful. Yeah. I don't like this scene with the spiders because it starts off with this wonderful shot where he climbs up to the top of the trees. He looks out over the canopy of the forest. I love this bit. He sees the lonely mountain way, way, way far in the distance. And then you get this movement in the trees, like the spiders are coming after him, this like ominous rumble, and you see the leaves shaking all around. And then they show up, and it's like just that scene from King Kong ad nauseum. It's very hard to see what's going on. It's all just like kind of cut to ribbons. Doesn't feel choreographed as nicely as some of the other action scenes, and they just don't look that great, right? Like, we have a great looking giant spider in a Lord of the Rings movie already, and like not a single one of these can hold up to the Shelob scene.
I mean, the scene's not as good as the Shelob scene, obviously. I do think they look good. I don't have any problem with the way they look. I mean, I think
they feel a little cartoony to me.
Well, I think it's also because they're in a, unlike the Shelob scene, which was shot on like a real set. This is just like CG trees and CG spiders and, CG everything, basically. So I think you have less tactile stuff going on.
Yeah, I mean, this one has like the video gamiest feel of everything in this movie. And there are moments later on, like when we go actually meet Smaug, you can see that Bilbo's standing up against a column that is clearly animated, that's not anything there. The angles are too perfect. It looks like CGI. I don't mind it there. I mind it here. I mean, I don't know. It's just kind of floaty and like just not a very interesting scene overall.
See, I really like this scene because I like that it's kind of creepy and weird, and I like that that
the lead up to it is very creepy.
And I really love, and I loved it then, I love it now, that when he puts on the ring, he can hear what the spiders are saying.
I do like that.
I always loved that. I think that's such a cool thing, and I mean, I think like, again, like most scenes in these movies, there's a little bit too much of it, right? It goes on a little bit too long. Jackson's very indulgent filmmaker in that way. And so I think like it just comes along with what he does. I do enjoy it. I do like that it's a scene. I think it's important in the fact that, and I think this scene and the next scene are both very important in the fact that Bilbo has like an active role to play in helping them and saving them and being an important part of the company and party, which I think you need in these.
And does it in such a Bilbo way too. Like in one moment he's like hacking limbs off of giant spiders, which is pretty badass. Then when he cuts them down, like he clearly is not really like they're falling way farther than they should be.
Yeah,
like,
absolutely. Yeah.
He didn't think to maybe like try to let them down a little. I liked that bit. Actually.
Yeah. But it does lead into like an element of the movie, which I think is one of my frustrations and one of the things I don't love, which is the appearance of our good friend Legolas, the elf, which is like just the like just straight up we've been calling prequel shit. It's definitely prequel shit, right? And it's like, I don't mind if he was like a cameo, like an extended cameo, but the fact that he becomes like such a central part of this movie and a central part of the next movie, it just feels like to me, like, because it makes like narrative sense that he would be there in this moment because that's where he's from and he would have been there when this happened. Like, it just would have been the case. So it's fine them being there, but the fact that he becomes a central role to it and he has such like a kind of like pseudo antagonist role in it is such a weird choice to me. It's kind of like the Han Solo movie thing where it's like, the Han Solo prequel, Han Solo learns it's not just about him. It's about this wider fight, but he has to learn that same exact lesson again in A New Hope.
Sure, yeah.
And then it's the same thing with Legolas in these movies. Like, he learns that dwarves are not too bad. And then in the next set of movies, he's got to learn it all over again, and it's like, okay, like, I don't need to see this. Like, I don't mind the inclusion of a little bigger inclusion of elves. Fine. I don't care about that. Like, I like Evangeline Lilly in this movie actually quite a bit.
Too. I like her in general.
Yeah, and I think she's very good in this movie, and I think her character is a lot of fun, and I would have been totally fine with her and some other new elf character being like playing these roles.
Or no other new elf. Like,
yeah,
right, like
maybe.
He's just kind of here to get in her way a lot, and it's like, if there was a romance there, maybe that would be something useful. Yes. But no, the romance is not between her and him. So yeah, no. He feels a little superfluous. I also think, and this is just a very petty thing, not that Orlando Bloom is not a great looking guy, but he definitely looks older here, and he's not supposed to be.
I can forgive it.
Years younger. I know, but it's like, he's very boyish, very fresh-faced in the original trilogy. Here, he looks like he's lived some life, and it's supposed to be the other way around, and it doesn't work for me as much as I want it to. Although he has some pretty badass scenes here. I mean, we kind of get a sense of him as a fighter, and he gets some fun action scenes, I think. So.
He does.
But that could have been any elf that's kind of like him.
And because we've seen 3 movies already, we don't get anything in this that we didn't get, anything that's more impressive than what we saw in the other 3 movies. So he brings nothing new to the story. Exactly. He brings nothing new to what we're watching. And that's one of my main frustrations with this. And it leaks directly into the next movie as well, which obviously it's tough, especially with this movie and then the next movie, not to conflate them together because, well, there's the next movie is basically the third act of this movie, so like it's a little bit weird, but I think that's one of my main frustrations. I like all the other stuff that happens here. I think Lee Pace fucking owns bones in this movie. I think he rules as Thandril. It's one of the best designed characters, I think, in the entire trilogy. Like his outfit, that crown, that like wooden like crown thing that he wears, I think looks so good. He's obviously like an unfairly attractive human being as well. So it's it really fits. He literally has that elf thing. There's a lot of those in this movie. There are, but I think it fits into the elf thing, right? Where he just like, it's like this person doesn't feel like they're human in some ways, because of the way that they look. And that's perfect. And his whole like vibe and way he carries himself, I think is really good. I really enjoy him in this movie. I like the look of Mirkwood and how it's different than the other elf places we've seen. But again, it is so CGI forward that I think it doesn't have the same impact of Lothlorien or Rivendell in the Lord of the Rings trilogy as well.
Yeah, I agree.
So, but I do like that they go to this. I think, again, one of the things with the scene, and I talked about at the beginning with the Thorin thing, the freaking, like, the king is like, yeah, we'll let you go. We'll give you weapons. We'll let you go do what you want to do. Just like, give me back the stuff that your grandfather kept from us, wrongfully. And Thorin's like, no way! I'd rather sit in jail for my whole life. And I'm like, all right, dude.
But his compatriots, when he tells them the story about it, they're like, oh, come on, dude.
No, and the movie does acknowledge that what he's doing is bullheaded and stupid, but he's supposed to be like, other than Bilbo, our main character. Sure. And they're just, in either of these movies, there is no arc to his personality, like almost at all. It's just the same
kind
thing.
Of whatever the scene needs him to be. Because he has, he really comes around at some points in the first movie, and he's kind of back to his gruff older,
And he has moments here too where he's like, "Oh, Mr. Baggins, I won't underestimate your abilities. I underestimate your abilities." And I'm like, how many times are we going to say this to Bilbo?
Absolutely. I did want to mention one of the things I really like in this part of the movie is you get like the one double entendre, like the one sexual comment in all of like any of these movies. It's Keeley, he kind of hits on Toriel. It's like she's searching him or something. He's like, "Oh, you should see what's in my pants," or whatever. Like, not that there's anything like brilliant about that. It's just we never really even acknowledge that kind of stuff in this world. And these are young body dwarf fighters, and he would say something like that. And these movies are so very chaste. They're so violent, and yet they're so chaste. And just this one little, very PG like sexual comment, I really like. I don't know why.
Yeah, no,
it kind of jumped out to me.
And I should look up the actor's name who plays Keeley in The Hobbit. What's his name? Aidan Turner is his name.
He's a lot of fun in this movie.
He's a lot of fun in the movie, and I think he's fun in that scene. Once again, one of the things I find frustrating about this movie is like I do not really have any investment in like the star-crossed lovers love story. It feels too much like Aragorn and Arwen. All of it is sort of like that, and we talked about the last one. I just don't like that they're like, but what if this dwarf is hot? Like, what if he looks like a hottie? I'm not really into that. So I think it would be more interesting, right, if he looked more dwarfish and she fell in love with him than like he's just a kind of short, really handsome guy. Like, it's like what it like ends up being, But I like it's not about their performances. I think they have good chemistry together, and I like that scene where he's talking about that like stone that he's got, or whatever.
Yeah, like I remember not liking that. I remember thinking that was kind of getting in the way of the story. And in this movie, it kind of this viewing of this movie, it worked for me, particularly later on. I like the scenes between them toward the end of the movie as well.
And it has nothing to do with, like I said, their performances or even like the way the scenes are written. It's just one of those things where it feels like we need something in this to like, propel it along or give it some sort of dimension, which I don't think is anything wrong with that. But for me, it just doesn't work because I just like, what investment do I have in either of these people to be like, I want them to be in love with each other, right?
Because this is a very classical Hollywood adventure movie, and you got to have a romance there somewhere.
I guess so.
It can't be Thorin. It can't be Bilbo. So I actually don't.
Would have been more
all.
interesting if she fell in love with Bomber or whatever.
Is he the fat one?
Yeah. It would have been much more interesting.
Bomber's a lot of fun in this movie too.
He is, and I want to call out specifically though Ken Stott, who plays Balin, who I think is great in this. I think he's got a lot of couple great scenes, and and he's got a couple great moments. I love that moment later in the movie with Bilbo right before he goes into like the dragon's den, and he just
me too. That's where I started. That's where I picked up today. I saw it the last time. I was like, no, I got to watch that scene again. It's so good. Yeah, like he is kind of the fatherly, he's older, he's like kind of the conscience, he's the wise old dwarf of this group, and I always love a character like that, and he's so, the look of him I think is perfect. He has this, there's something very likable about him, like you just kind of want to hug him and let him tell you stories or something.
Absolutely. Really sad to think.
Grandfatherly sort of quality.
That he gets killed in that freaking orc raid in Moria, because he's the one that they're, the book that Gandalf reads out of.
Yes, that's right.
That's the diary he's reading. Here lies Balin, son of whatever. That's him there. Oh, and this reminds me of my least favorite thing in the entire movie is freaking Legolas looking at the picture of Gloin's son. Sure,
yeah, that ugly.
And being like, "Who's this ugly freak?" or whatever. And I'm like, "Okay, guys, like, no, it's just that elbowing, like, but they'll be friends later, thing and stuff like that. I just hate that stuff. So, I really dislike that. But I like this whole scene. I like, again, Bilbo using his brain, figuring out a way to get out. Like he uses the ring, obviously, but he also plans out like, I'm going to do figures out how to get them out, right? How to get all these people out without being seen.
Well, he relies on elves getting real drunk to enact his plan here, which is another thing I kind of like.
Yeah, I like that too. And there's like a party going on or whatever. And this leads right into the barrel sequence, right? Which I still think, again, there's a couple CGI moments where I'm like, it looks like cartoon characters or whatever. But overall, it's just one of the things, like you said, it's so inventive. It's like, I've never seen this before.
Yep.
In a movie before, and it's like such a multi-tiered, multi-layered action sequence with all this stuff going on. There's like
on the river, on the banks with the orcs and the elves. It's incredible. This is where I have a good friend who's just very particular about things, and he read all the books and loved them and loves the original trilogy. This is where he bailed on the Hobbit movies, and
really?
If you even bring them up, he's like, that barrel scene, that's it. I'm fucking done. I'm out. Like he's very hard-headed when it comes to these things. That's why I like talking to him about this stuff, because every time he says that, I was like, no, I like the barrel scene. That's a lot of fun. I don't care if it's fun. That's not the Hobbit. That's not the Hobbit movie I wanted. you kind of throw your hands up. But yeah, this is where, as I mentioned, it's very silent comedy. It's very Buster Keaton. It's just constant movement, constant action, everything sort of working in concert together. We're cutting back and forth very seamlessly between things. It's just beautifully choreographed. And I know a lot of it is not real, but, in the moment, it's just so, like, you just get so caught up in the movement and the dynamism of it. And, we're bouncing, we're stepping, we're getting out of the barrel, we're jumping out, we're on a bridge, and then we're going to jump back in and land right in there and do some cool stuff up there and kill some orcs. And it's just such a fun scene. Like, it literally is just pure joy. It's pure fun. It's meant to be an amusement park ride, and it absolutely is one.
You mentioned the bomber, like when Bomber does like that kind of whirling dervish thing where he gets out and he's like spinning around.
Yes, he's got the barrel. He kind of uses it as a shield. He like shoots his arms out of the sides and he's spinning around, knocking orcs over it. Like, what kind of mirthless person wouldn't enjoy that? My buddy Tom, that's the guy.
Yeah, so much fun. I like all that stuff. Oh, one thing the cool little moment that I don't like, I just don't like Legolas running on their heads and shooting. Like, it just looks too CGI squishy to me. And again, it's just too much. Like, we've seen him do stuff like this before, and that's the only time where it gets in my way. But the rest of it, I think, is great. I do think it's really funny though when Keely goes to pull the lever and he gets shot in his hand's like on the lever and he gets shot in the leg, and then he's like, and he falls back. I'm like, just fall straight down, pull the lever, So,
I really like also, it's another thing you see a lot of in this movie that we haven't seen much of in this trilogy is the machinery. Like, there's a lot of gears and levers and just like steampunky mechanical stuff that I always enjoy that. And you don't really get that anywhere else in the Lord of the Rings movies. Am I missing something? I don't think so.
No, not really, because you don't really get a lot of time with the dwarfs, and that's really kind of the dwarf world, right?
Exactly, and I really like that.
Yeah.
Like that can be part of this world as well.
One of the things I do really like about like this scene, the barrel scene, is like it is very dwarf specific. You have to be kind of small to fit into a barrel and use it as a boat to get down a river, right? And do all this stuff in it. So, only dwarfs could have done this, what they're doing, right? And the stuff later on in the mines is also like that, right? It's a lot of like, activate this machinery, use this thing, do this thing.
And jump into a minecart that's like just big enough for sure.
Yeah, and I like all that stuff because it does feel different, right? Than even when we're in the mines in the Fellowship, none of that stuff happens, right? We're not interacting with any of that, right? And this...
No, it's just bridges and holes.
Yeah, it's very taking advantage of the fact that these are the dwarves, this is their home, they know their strength is this stuff, right? And I like that a lot about it. So they go down the river on the barrels, which I really like. It's a lot of fun. And, again, we're kind of getting this kind of thing, right, where everybody other than Gandalf and Galadriel are sort of like, there's nothing, either I'm not worried about some big thing coming back, or it's not going to affect us. We're going to stay in our little group and not worry about it. And that's sort of like Fandrel's vibe, right? It's like, just close the gates, don't like let anybody in or let anybody out, and we'll just weather the storm here because that's what we've always done, or whatever. And, so we get that sense going on there. And then obviously, God, what is her name? The Evangeline Lilly character's name again? Toriel. She kind of books it out and Legolas follows after because he's in love with her, but he can't be with her because he's the king's son. And she's just like a lowly elf warrior or whatever. I don't understand elf politics, but that's the deal with that. But Legolas obviously has a real pines after her quite a bit. He's doing a lot of Orlando Bloom stares at her.
I understand.
Constantly. Obviously. Yeah. She's a gorgeous woman. Like, and I think the next, we're really with the Hobbit, the dwarves and Bilbo for a long time before we see Gandalf again. So we're like, I think we go right from this to Lake Town, right? I think we see the Luke Evans character, Bard, right? They get to like this kind of shore, and they need like a passage right across the lake to get to the mountain. And they meet this human named Bard, I believe is his name, played by Luke Evans, an actor I really enjoy, and I think he's very charming in this movie. The Lake Town stuff is very like, apparently there's a lot more of it in the extended edition, like a lot more about like what the deal with like the master mayor
his servant. Yeah. I will say, I really like the location. I mean, this is the point in this movie where I'm kind of fully on board for it. And it's kind of a different looking location than we've seen before. Like it is, has this, almost Venetian sort of look about it, like right in the middle of a lake town. The most creative name in the entire trilogy, I think.
Yeah, The Hobbit is not very strong with like the unique names because it's a children's book.
It's aptly named, sure.
Yes. Yeah.
But I kind of like this stuff. It's as close as we get to like a place where they can just hang out and collect their thoughts and catch their breath for a little while. I forget how this is all cut together, because there's a moment where Gandalf goes to meet Radagast. And I think that's happened already at this point.
It might have happened already. So they meet like in the woods, right near Dol Guldur, right? That's kind of where it happens, right?
Well, he climbs up this. It's a moment, kind of seared into my brain forever, because there's these steps cut into the side of a mountain and a cave entrance, a door that's the entrance to a tomb, like at the very top of the mountain.
Yes.
I love this so much.
I forgot about this. This is one of my
favorite things in this movie. It's one of my favorite things in all of these movies, because I love the idea of this world. There's just places like that, right? That we know is not important. We're never going to see this again. But somebody built this tomb into the side of a mountain. I mean, it's such a Dungeons and Dragons. This whole movie feels like the greatest D&D campaign you've ever played, right?
Yeah.
And it's just this location that we only see this one time. And Gandalf is kind of working his way up these like very precarious steps cut into the mountain. Like, that's adventure to me. That's what I want out of these movies, is this just like magical, this place out in the middle of nowhere, and clearly it's very hard to get there, and every step is fraught with peril. And then you go in this door at the top of a mountain and start descending down. Just the look of it and just kind of what that all means and what that feels like you feel how alone he is. I forgot what he was doing there, and it was like, oh, Radagast is here too, which kind of breaks that illusion a little bit. But this little adventure that he's on, I was very caught up in that. And that scene of him climbing up. I love scenes of characters climbing up precarious rocky steps and things. There's an even better one later in this movie that I completely forgot about. So just another one of those Nick things. I bring them up all the time on this show. I love stuff like that so much. I love heights.
I had totally forgotten about them going to what is like the tomb of the Nazgul, basically, is where they're going there. And you see like the thing broken open or whatever. And I think in a very uncharacteristic Jackson move, he doesn't really emphasize what they're doing there, right? There is no big line like the nine have escaped their prisons or whatever,
which I
there's
like
no
about
line like that
it,
at all. They mention, in the first movie about this, like where these guys are buried in this place that no one can reach because of all these like security measures or whatever that are on it, but they don't bring it up again, and they don't even kind of reinforce that here. But yeah, I think it's a really nice moment as well. And I like the little side adventure he's going on with Radagast, and then they go to Dol Guldur, and he basically says just go and tell Galadriel what's up, essentially. And I'm going to go in there, and I know it's a trap, and I'm just going to deal with it, but don't come in here no matter what happens, basically.
Good advice.
Very good advice considering what's in there. And I always love stuff like this, whether it's in a fantasy movie or like a horror movie or whatever it might be. It's this idea of like something looks normal, but it's because something evil is sort of like shifting your perception. And there's really something very scary just beyond that veil that you can't see. I've always loved that concept. I think it's very like enticing and spine tingling and kind of scary. And I always enjoy that. And they do that here. They kind of break it when they show the orcs in the basement and they're like, the wizard is breaking the spell or whatever. I'm like, guys, I didn't need this.
It's true, yeah. This is a great, I'm going to call it a set, although I don't think it's really
some of it's a set, for
some
sure.
of it is real, some of it is not. But I do love the look at this and the grittiness and the broken downness of it. Reminds me of things from the original trilogy, but so do a lot of things here.
I love the like thorny giant vines that are all over it. I think that's really cool.
Skeletons in cages just suspended all over everything. The production design is great here.
Yeah.
It does have that like very nice sort of ominous feel about it.
Yeah. And I really like this whole sequence for the most part. I like that he's able to, fight off the orcs. I love seeing when they do like Gandalf fight stuff. I think it's always fun to see even though it's probably a stuntman, sometimes a CGI double, but it's fun to like imagine, an old man like Ian McKellen like kicking ass in that way.
Wielding his staff, swinging it around his head, pushing them back with it. And like I said, the glimpse we get of Sauron here is so cool. Like that the horned helmet, he's kind of walking out of the pupil or the iris of the eye. I really, I forgot how many like awesome images there were in this trilogy because there's so many in the original that kind of stick in your head. But like, Peter Jackson has an eye for it. No pun intended.
Yeah.
He really is very good at kind of getting these moments across and making them look interesting and making them look memorable. And like, this is a character that probably doesn't need to be here at all. Like, we don't need Sauron. That's a problem, as we said, of the whole trilogy. But like, seeing him here, like, he's never looked more badass than that.
It's cool. It is. I do really think that image is very cool. They use him to like. It looks like just like the eye at first, and then you realize no, it's like a person
There's a very skinny person kind of making their way toward you out of the eye. It's very creepy. I like it a lot.
It is very creepy, and I like that. I like the scene. I like that it's like. Again, I love when you power set things and against other things, and like Gandalf is very strong, but he can't hold back this thing, And obviously we know this, right? We know how powerful this being will become, but. Like Gandalf says right before that he goes in there, he says, because Radagast is like, why would he be hiding or whatever? And he goes, because he's not, reached his full power yet. And I like that about it, right? And I like this idea too that like he sort of like figures out like a normal person couldn't do what is happening here, So there's like more going on. I like that it's like there's a little bit of an investigation thing happening on this side, which I enjoy. And then, but then Gandalf is kind of like gets like Gandalf gonna do, he gets captured and put in a cage, and he's kind of watching sort of like the progression. This side of things won't really be resolved until, the next movie, basically.
So last we see him, I think?
Yeah, it is last we see him. Yeah. Which is one of the things with this movie, right, where it feels like it gets cut off at the climax, of the movie, which is just, it's a strange thing. So
it'd just be nice to check in later on if we find a way to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. With the Lake Town stuff, we got all the political, like he tries to do this, like the mayor has been the mayor for forever. There are no elections,
Stephen Fry, he's a lot of fun in this movie.
I love Stephen Fry in general.
It's kind of superfluous. Yeah, sure, he's great.
Yeah.
But it all pays off. There's this one shot, it's related to something else. I think it's Keeley, where he like lands in the middle of the street and behind him he like steps to the side and in the background there's a giant ass statue of Stephen Fry's character there, and I was like, you know what, I actually like this scene just for setting that up.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just a really great sort of visual moment there.
I like that Luke Evans' character is kind of like a smuggler, and he's got like, smuggler techniques to do things. We get a little fun sequence where we're in the barrels and they're filled with fish and, all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's great. The sort of the smuggling stuff, the fast talking, even though like nobody trusts him, nobody likes him. And I actually this character Bard kind of has a point. He's telling them not to go back to the Lonely Mountain and unleash the dragon, which is exactly what they do against his wishes. And we'll see in the next movie, that dragon's going to lay waste to his hometown.
Yeah.
His family is threatened by orcs. They're there because they're chasing Thorin because Thorin was there. And so, although he's kind of an antagonist too, he's right in a lot of ways. And it kind of makes you question like, oh, should they actually be doing this? Like, is it worth them, potentially reclaiming their homeland if they're going to kill all these people, if they're going to put all of these innocent people in danger? These people who don't seem to have amazing lives as it is.
No, they seem like pretty shitty lives for the most part. But I think what I like about Luke Evans and the character in general is that like, yeah, he is sort of like antagonistic in some ways because he's trying to stop them from doing what they're doing, but he still helps them even after that, right? He's still and I think I like that about it. Here's also where we set up like, what is obviously Chekhov's, I don't know, Black Arrow or whatever.
Chekhov's Black Arrow, sure.
Where it's like,
it's another character who has a birthright. Yeah, it's, that is his destiny to finish off Smaug because it was his father or his grandfather that fired the first arrow. I think it's his
grandfather, I think,
to break off the scale. And now there's a hole, this very distinctive hole. Yeah. It's... But, that's so much these movies, that's so much this story, right? That this character needs to kind of redeem his entire bloodline by, like, that's where that's going. And I don't know, we accept that and we kind of like that. I accept that.
I do. I think most of it's driven by, I think Luke Evans is very good and very charming in it. So it fills a lot of the gaps that you don't really get as far as actual like story or character time with him. You know, I think, again, the movie, it's so funny that the movies, there's 3 of these movies and they don't really have time to like even go into, you know, anything about that character other than like a couple of lines, anything about what the master is and what his assistant is and what the whole thing is going on in this town. You know, it's one of those things too where it's like barely even, you have to sort of like really pay attention to realize that the town that gets kind of like destroyed in the prologue of the first movie is different than this town. And we're going to see that in a little bit. We're going to see Dale, which is the town kind of closer to the mountain that was destroyed by the dragon.
I don't agree with that. I mean, I didn't read the books and I understood that they were different places. Like Lake Town is such a distinctive setting, right?
Yeah, but you don't really even see Dale you see him for like 3 seconds in the prologue.
Yeah, but
you
it's
see
not
like a
surrounded
tower
by water.
I don't know. You see a tower falling, and that's like all you see. But I think like, so there's not a lot of time here with this other than just like showing sort of like basically his house and underneath his house and like the dock. Basically, the only 2 things we really get of the town. Get a fun kind of like brawl with the orcs, which I think has some interesting stuff to it. But again, and I like that they separated them. But this is one of those things where I'm like, we're just doing this scene like to kind of give so we can cut between like the mountain and here, right? Because we haven't gotten to the action yet in the mountain. So like we need action here so that, you know, them sort of like climbing.
It's a little bit of padding, but I will also say it's a really, really nicely done close quarters fight scene.
Yeah, no, it is. It
very
is
inventive for it. Like this is when this starts to feel a little bit like a martial arts movie for a little bit.
Yeah, for sure.
And we're just smashing orcs' heads into columns, and I don't know. I forgot all about this scene because probably it is not that important, but this is, you know, pretty bone crunching stuff. And I really like the choreography of it. The way Bard's family is involved in this also, and they're hiding under the kitchen table and knocking over benches to like create a barrier. Just some nice stuff. Like it's what I think is great about this movie is it is, you know, Hollywood blockbuster, you know, CGI, big budget action movie to a T, but everything feels very, very well thought out. You know, it's not just an action scene. It's an action scene where every moment, like there's stakes and there's like some kind of interesting little wrinkle to what's going on. Like it's not just the same thing happening over and over and over and over again. It's not just a fight scene where it's like, let's see how many orcs we can kill here and, you know, put our characters in danger and have them fight their way out of it. I mean, there's a little bit of that, but there's some just nice choreography, some nice ideas about how to use this location, how to make this feel different from when they're, you know, out in the world, you know, fighting orcs, you know, in a forest or something like that.
Yeah, for sure. No, I agree with you on that. I don't disagree with you on that. I do like that moment where the orc gets like seesaw catapulted back up towards Legolas.
That is
like
fantastic, and he like swishes the swords together and ends up with his head kind of sitting balanced on the 2 of them. That's my favorite Legolas moment in this movie.
I like that moment quite a bit. I like there's that moment where Legolas kind of like gets it doesn't have the upper hand, right, where he kind of gets beat up a little bit. I think that's a fine moment. You know, and this is a moment where we know our love story kind of like coalesces a little bit. She saves him much the way that Arwen saves Frodo with the Ethelos plant and all this kind of stuff. And, you know, we get some fun times with the dwarves that are there. But I think over at the mountain side of things, we get the fun thing where they climb up that, I think we were talking about before, that staircase that's sort of like built into the side of the statue.
Absolutely love this. Yeah, they're like climbing up the robes. Which are cut in this like kind of checkerboard like stair step pattern. Yeah, it's great. And then some of them are running across, like his arm is extended and they're like his arm and his sword are a bridge and they're running across it. We see both at the same time. It's just, you know, it's little touches like that make this feel so much more than, you know, like your generic Marvel movie or something like that, you know?
Absolutely. And I think it's video game inspired in the good way, right? Where it does feel like something you do in
there's a lot of like Tomb Raider in this movie for sure.
Like a platform, an action platformer, right? Where you're like, oh, well, if I go up there like that, I can go on the sword. I think I can get up to that spot. You know, that's what it feels like.
Yeah, like a Shadow of the Colossus, sure.
Yeah, that's what it feels like, you know? And then we get, you know, some of the stuff, I do really like stuff like the riddle stuff. I like stuff where there's like a riddle involved and someone has to figure it out. I always like that stuff.
The solution to this one's awfully easy though, isn't it?
Yeah, it's just one of those things where I think I think the idea is right. You just got to have some patience, right?
Yeah,
and I think that's really the biggest foible of Thorin. He has no patience, and he really has no hope. Honestly, he doesn't really have a real amount of hope. He really just has like this fleeting thing. He's put all his hope into this map, and I do really like that moment of Armitage where he's like, "That's what it says." It like it feels so like he's so hopeless in that moment, right? Where he seems so much more like a child in that moment, where he's just, I did what it said. This is the only thing it says. Like, what else are we supposed to do?
Yeah, life's not fair.
Life's not fair moment for sure. And I think this is one of the first times we do. Also, when they're up there, we get that moment with, Balin. Where he's sort of like, this drove your grandfather insane, right? What's in there, and he's like, I'm not my grandfather or whatever. I'm like, we obviously know where this is going eventually because, you wouldn't say this line if, we're not going to get something like this later on. But, you do get finally a sense of like, there is a bad side to going here, right? Like they have this, it's so weird that we get to this point, like so late in the game in the second movie that they bring up the point that there is like a negative aspect possibly, to him going back to this place and what it might do to him, might do them as a group, right? But Bilbo figures it out mostly by just staying behind.
Yeah, just standing there and waiting for the moon to come out.
Because I like that, because that is the stubbornness of Bilbo, right? Where he's like, no, this can't be it. Like, there's got to be something here. Like, and, we get a very movie thing where all of a sudden he's, Armitage, Thorin saves the key from going over the side, even though he was nowhere to be seen 30 seconds before that, but it's fine. It's a nice little moment. They get in and we have, basically we're just building up to Bilbo going down into the main thing to do his job, which is to steal the Arkenstone, right? Which it's somewhere in where the dragon is, and he needs to find it, essentially is what it is. I think there's a really good scene from Martin Freeman where he's, kind of building up his bravery to go down there. We mentioned the Balin thing. The one where Balin says like, you can not do this. Like there is no shame in you not doing this. And he's like, no, I promised. And I love that he says, and I think I have to try. Like, That's what he says. And I just love that it's such a simple, like innocent thing to say, right? I think I have to try. And we get that really great moment, from his name, Ken Stott, where that little laugh he does when, he's looking at
Hobbits.
it. Yeah. Really, really like that quite a bit. And then we get what is, I think, is the best scene in the entire movie, which is just Bilbo talking to a dragon, and
let's not get ahead of ourselves because the reveal of Smaug, those first couple of moments when he goes down there, first of all, I love the way this location looks.
Oh yeah.
This expansive room full of just like piled up, it's Scrooge McDuck's vault on a grand scale.
Yeah.
He goes down there. It is all very ominous. As I said before, they really nicely set up like, maybe the dragon's not even there, right? How do we know? You get that really kind of, that very heartfelt moment we were just talking about, like everything going into this scene. We're so invested in Bilbo and what he's going to do. And this, again, it's like with Gandalf a little while ago, we were talking about this journey that you kind of go on alone, even though these movies are about friendship and fellowship and all that. Sometimes it's like, it's just you kind of braving these things solo. And I think you get a really, really good sense of that here. And just the way he's kind of looking at, first of all, the imposter, it's a literal needle in a haystack, right? Like to find the Arkenstone, and Balin says, you'll know it when you see it. Mm-hmm. Which he goes down there and he definitely does not see it.
Yeah. I just love like that he goes down there and he's like, what am I supposed to do? Like, he just like, he spends a lot of time looking in one little place at like four things,
Yeah, absolutely. Well, also, even before that, right, he enters this doorway and he knocks and he says, hello, which is the stupidest thing to do.
I know.
But like, kind of makes sense in the moment. And he's like, oh, nobody's home, which of course someone is. But the slow reveal of Smaug is just incredible. I love it.
The way that gold falls down and the way he realizes the scale where it's like falling down here and then he looks over and it's also falling down.
More of it falling, like 100 feet away. Absolutely. The way the first movement of Smaug is just a twitch in his sleep, where the coins start to fall a little bit. Yeah, this is all just, it's just pure movie magic, very Spielberg-y sort of stuff here. I love it.
And Cumberbatch sounds great coming
Yes,
out of
he
that
does,
dragon's
yeah.
mouth, man.
Absolutely.
I'm like, I buy it 1,000,000%, man. Like,
I
just
gotta tell you, one of the things that I was a little trepidatious about going into this movie was like, I don't like a talking dragon.
yeah.
You know, whether it's Sean Connery or whoever, I like my dragons to be the strong, silent type.
Uh-huh.
You know, Game of Thronesy type dragons. And yet I could not think of this any other way than with Benedict Cumberbatch, just Cumberbatching the hell out of this scene.
Well, because it does what I think the movie wants to do with the orc antagonists, which it gives you a character that is directly opposed to our heroes, right? And not in a way that feels manufactured, in a way that feels obvious, because it's the whole point of their quest, right? Is to go over there and to find this gold and to get the dragon out. And I think if it didn't talk, I think it would be a lot less affecting, because it would just be another force that was opposing them, and not a character that was opposing them. And the movie sorely needs a character to oppose them.
And that gives him a way to kind of toy with Bilbo, which he does. You know, he never believes Bilbo. I think that's pretty obvious. Bilbo's tries to flatter him, and he kind of bullshits him a lot. And, you know, Smaug is old and wise and ancient, and you know, he just hasn't had any company in a really long time. It's kind of like Gollum in the last movie. So it's like, I might as well at least fuck with this guy a little bit, because clearly I'm going to burn him alive or eat him or something. But, you know, since somebody's here, I might as well have a little bit of fun and you know, dance around it a little bit. It's a very fun back and forth the two of them have.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
it all just looks, I mean, say what you want about any of the effects in these movies, but like Smaug looks incredible.
He does. And the way he moves, I love the way he moves.
Unbelievable. Yep.
And there's so much like momentum and force and stuff, the way he moves, and the way that he can't just stop on a dime. He's got to like, you know,
and his tail swings around and knocks out a column, which like a bridge falls on. You know, there's like, he's just destroying the set or the setting as he's moving through it, and obviously upsetting all the treasure that's everywhere. It is, again, like, this does feel like it has a lot of weight to it, a lot of, you know, the feeling of that tactility that I like a lot, even though this is all clearly very, as I said before, literally everything, you know, even things that you easily could have put in, you know, just one actual set element. They're clearly not, but it's fine.
Yeah, no, it's not. And I do, like you said, he's like toying with him, right? And I like that about the scene. It's not like, you know, there's like 5 separate times at least that Smaug could have just decimated him at any moment, but he's just kind of playing with him. You know, and I enjoy that as a vibe.
The way the Arkenstone keeps getting away from Bilbo, and it keeps like descending further and further down into the chamber. I love that. I love that this isn't just a chase scene. This is not just, oh, I woke up the dragon, run.
Yeah.
But he kind of talks his way through it, and then's always looking over his shoulder as the stone just, and like the moments of Martin Freeman just being like, oh, shit, and I lost it again. Really great. There's a few of those. Like, he just can't seem to keep this in his hands. Really nice.
Yeah. And I think Freeman does a great job of playing this like real courage.
Yeah.
Like this idea that like I am terrified beyond any bounds of terror I could have ever felt or thought to felt in my entire life. And I'm putting on this brave face to try to do this thing. Right. And I really like that about his performance in these moments. And again, like you said, I like the dynamics. I like seeing him sliding down all the gold, and like, but I always like that he's got like a plan. It's not like he's just laying down randomly and he gets behind a pillar. He's like, no, I see a pillar. I'm going to slide down this gold. I'm going to get behind this pillar, you know? And I also love with the ring thing. I love the line where he kind of like, where Smaug kind of calls it out. You're carrying something gold, but it's so much more. Like this idea that there's that moment where you obviously like Sauron kind of like the power of the ring makes him take off the ring, because the ring kind of wants to be found. There's that moment where he first gets seen where he's like, why did I take off? I didn't even realize he takes off the ring. Right. And I really like that about the way the scene, you know, plays out.
That's a great bit too. We skipped right over that, where he is invisible and Smaug is like, I can smell you. That's really, really fun there.
Yeah. Really, really fun. Really, really fun moment in there. And all the dialogue is great between them. I think, you know, and I think Smaug kind of being like a, into the gossip, you know, of the world, because he's like, I know what's going on. I really
how does
like
he
that.
know?
I don't know, man.
Like, he's been just sleeping under like hundreds of pounds of gold coins. But apparently he's got some kind of line to the outside world.
And like, the thing is, like, he's not wrong. about Thorin, about what Thorin's doing with him.
Yeah.
You know, and I like that about it too. It's always good to have a villain who's not necessarily 100% lying all of the time, which I enjoy in this. You know, and the couple things are really funny about this, though. The way that they decide to end this, right, is that Bilbo, like the Arkenstone thing, doesn't get resolved in this movie, which is insane, right?
I forgot about that, and I'm like, oh, he must have just like stashed it in an inner pocket or something.
Yeah.
But then, like, why didn't we see that?
Which I think that's going to be the I remember that's going to be like the reveal.
Yeah.
Like, but it's one of those things where it's like this becomes it's a central part of this moment. And then it just gets like forgotten through all the action stuff. And it would be like in the Riddles in the Dark if they ended it before Bilbo took the ring. You know, it's like such a weird decision to do here. And, you know, I also don't think necessarily that like the moment where, you know, Thorin sort of like at sword point pushes Bilbo back into the chamber or whatever, I don't think it really works 100%. It feels like it comes out of nowhere in a lot of ways.
And I was pretty invested in the bromance between Thorin and Bilbo, and I was like, no, you can't do that here. Like, we're past this point.
Yeah. You know, and it's like, I do like what it leads to, because I think all of the stuff with Smaug chasing the dwarves through the mines is so good.
Yep.
And like you said, every moment of it is a differently conceived action set piece that is a totally different location of the mind, right? That looks different.
Every one of them looks incredible. Every one of them is just something cool. You know, these movies are so great for just like throwing these settings and throwing these ideas at you that just no one's ever done before. The gold statue, amazing.
Oh, so good. Yeah. That reveal is great. You're like, what is underneath these rocks? And it's like this perfectly preserved
you think they're trying to
statue.
just like push the rocks over onto Smaug, and I'm like, he's just sitting there. That's not going to work. And then you see it's uncovering. That's after... That's like
one of the last things. That's like the last thing that happens, because like Smaug leaves after that.
Is amazing.
Yeah.
Bofur, it's Bofur, right? The fat one.
Yeah.
Riding down on the chain and like his ass hits the bell.
Yeah.
So good.
But I love, like you said, all the mechanics of it, right? Like, this is how, obviously there'd be a lot more of them if their whole, like, you know, the city was there and their whole workforce was there. But I love seeing how they would do it, right? The water, the bellows, how all of that stuff works. You know, the fact that
it's all, you know, just really interestingly conceived. It's like the Looney Tunes in the best sort of way.
Mm-hmm, yeah. And before that, we get like, I like the splitting up thing, I think, is like a really clever, fun little moment, right? I love the moment where, you know, and Thorin rides like the little like boat basically through the Golden River or whatever. I think
that's great. And then leaps off at the end, jumps onto the chain. You know, it's all just daring do Indiana Jones stuff. I enjoy that so much. Like, so many movies try to do that, and you just get none of that sense of like danger and thrills and adventure.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this whole movie is so much like an amusement park, right? Because the end of Attack of the Clones is very similar to this. It's just like a way worse version of this. Let's be positive. This is a way better version of that, right?
It is.
Like, it feels a little, it works better.
Mm-hmm.
It's better choreographed. It's better thought out. It has a little bit more weight and like realism.
You're talking about like the droid factory scene, right?
Yeah. Which I always thought was a fun scene. You know, it's that the end of that movie is very, it's Harryhausen meets Warner Brothers cartoon, right? But like, it never really clicked for me in that one. I liked the idea of that more than the execution of it. Here is like the good execution of that, right? Like, it's a living cartoon, and it's just so much fun. Like, every bit of this is just phenomenal.
Like, I love stuff like, you know, when Smaug like is chasing the one group and he breathes all the fire, and like the ground is getting hot, and the one dwarf is like ha 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 ha, ha when he's like running across. Like, I just like little moments like that. I like little moments that happen like that. Like you're saying, like,
I love
Looney Tune cartoony
when there's a counterweight. Like, Thorin is like falling down the shaft, and then someone cuts the rope,
when he's falling, he
starts flying back up, and then Smaug comes up after him, breathes fire, and he's like, you know, flying up with the fire, just like right on his heels. Just so many fun moments like that, and they just keep piling on and piling on. I was like, this scene is still going, and I'm not bored. Give me more, and it just continued to do that. Like that, I love it.
I think Armitage is great in that one moment where he's like, "You've gotten fat." And satisfied, or whatever.
Slow,
I love that. I love when they call him like dragon slurs, like worm or slug or whatever, you know.
Yes, yeah. Slug is the one that seems like the nastiest. That's what
Yeah.
you never want to call a dragon, apparently.
And like I love oh no, something terrible is coming. Get behind this pillar and it will like shape around us. Like when the fire comes through that like gate. And then I love that Smaug has to pulls down the gate, like that giant like metal gate thing or all those pillars, and he pulls it off when he's getting into the forge, And I do like the confusion on like, again, the animation is so good on the dragon. Like the moment where he's looking at the statue and the statue's starting to melt and he has like that look of like, what's going on right now?
It's so expressive, yeah.
It's so expressive. Like, I know exactly what this dragon is thinking right now.
You
and
can
like,
tell these are the people who made King Kong.
Yeah, absolutely. And even the look of it all covered in gold is like very cool.
It's amazing. Well,
yeah.
Just we're getting the way it starts to melt a little bit.
Yeah.
And then you get that like explosion of gold out of the eye of the statue.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Smaug covered in gold is amazing looking. I kind of wish that stuck so he could be like that for the rest of the movie.
Yeah. The rest of the movie, that's like, we got like 30 seconds left of the movie at that point.
Yeah.
Because he shakes off the gold and he goes like, I'll show you death or whatever. Flies towards the town. Bilbo watches him and says, what have we done? Credits.
Cut to black. Yep.
An insane way to end a movie. Like, and it's all because of this idea and manufactured idea of dividing into 3 movies. There is no way you'd ever end a movie like that unless you were forcing a third full movie onto this. And if you know the Hobbit book, you're like, there's like 40 pages left of this book. How are they making an entire movie out of the last 40 pages? This should be like basically probably like the midpoint of the second movie, right? Where he destroys the town. Like that is what it really it should be at that point. That's what he's going off to do. And that's how the movie ends.
I'll be very honest with you. The scene of him like laying siege to Lake Town, I thought that was the end of this movie.
Yeah.
Like I was like, wait a minute, how are we going to do that in the couple minutes that are left here? I was like, oh, we're just not even going to bother. Because I don't remember. I would have wanted to see that. I would have probably been disappointed, not knowing that was coming. I don't know.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I had the same feeling.
But it does give us something to look forward to, because I know there's some dodgy parts of the last movie in this trilogy, but like that scene's awesome, and I remember it being awesome, and I hope it still is. I was like, how much longer is left in the movie? Like when we were in the gold melting scene, and I was like, I know there are at least 10 minutes of credits. I was like, so we're in like the last 2 minutes of this movie right now. How are we in the last 2 minutes of this movie? And then I was like, oh my God, I totally forgot. This is how this movie ended, crazy way to end a movie. And that's kind of an audacious and fun way to end a movie though. I just think it's a bad way to end a movie. You're ending the movie in the middle of a scene. Like it's unforgivable to me, Nick. I enjoy this movie. I think this movie is quite good, but I think this is one of those things where when anyone says like, but it shouldn't be 3 movies, I can't disagree with them, right? It's just one of those things where I think it's very frustrating that the movie ends this way. And the only reason it ends this way is because not enough stuff is left after the Smaug destroys the town. I agree with that. That they needed to put it in their movie because they need to put more stuff in that movie. Like that is the only reason why. There is no other reason why you do it other than that. And I think because it's made for, I think more a financial, decision than a creative decision. I don't like it. I'll say this though. I mean, you're right, and I agree with you. And it's the decision to make this 3 movies and to pad it out the way they did and extend it the way they did. Maybe not the best decision, but like you can't ask for any more out of the action climax of a movie than what you get here. No, you can't. I mean, all that stuff is fantastic. I'm not arguing with that at all. And like, I think by the time that scene is over and Smaug escapes, it's like, you can't do any more, right? Like if they had just added anything onto the end of this or shown more of that, like, we need to catch our breath at some point. Like I said, that scene just keeps escalating and escalating in a wonderful sort of way. But like, now we're going to get another action sequence. I don't think you could do it. No, but that's also the fact that scene in the mines is very long because he needs to design it as the final action sequence of a movie, right? And I think like, not that what came out was great. You won't get any argument from me there,
but it's just the whole sort of mapping out of the structure of this falls flat for me at the end, because we were promised something that we're not going to get until the next movie, and it's going to start the next movie, basically. And then that's it. And then that story is done. We move on to like the next story, basically, of the Hobbit. And it just, again, once feels like the beginning of this movie, which is like, okay, this feels like it should come at a different point in a movie, you know, and the same thing's going to happen when we do the next movie. So that's my main argument with it. If this was like an audacious creative choice, I would be much more into it than it is, right? I have no problem with like, well, let's end this in a real crazy place. Like, no problem with that. You know, I remember back when I played Halo 2, and people were so angry that it ends with him like climbing onto this rocket and saying, "I'm going to finish the fight," or whatever, and then when credits, like, because they were going to Earth or whatever, and people were like so angry that I was like, that's such a cool way to end something, like that, you know, is the second part of what's going to be like a 3-part thing. But this just doesn't feel like that to me. You know, it's like, what have we done? We know what you've done. You've unleashed a dragon on a town, you know? And what it does, the problem is like it gives like a weird anticlimax to Bard completely, because he's going to kill the dragon at the very beginning of the next movie. And then it's like, he has no place anymore.
Then what's he going to do for the rest of it?
You know? And they create a thing for him to do. But it's just, and then when we get into this third movie, it's like, then we got to do a war movie. And that's just not what the vibe of this whole thing has been. You know what I mean? And so, you know, we'll get there next time when we get there. But overall, I really liked this movie, and I have my problems with it. But the bottom line is, that we said at the beginning, it is a damn entertaining movie from minute one to the last moment. Like, it is just entertainment through and through. Inventive, interesting, good performances, all of that stuff. You know, I think
great scenes, even when we slow down just a little bit, which is very rare in this movie. They're all really well done, really nice. I really, this is going to be a regular watch for me. I don't know if I'd do the entire trilogy. There's, you know, I liked a lot of things in Unexpected Journey, and I don't think I could watch this without kind of setting it up with that. But I'll be the entire time watching that one, just looking forward to getting to the stuff in this one, because it's just so good.
Yeah, and it made me go like, you know what? Next time I watch these, maybe I will for the first time watch the extended editions to see what the extra stuff is that he put in, just so I wouldn't
mind seeing more.
So I know what was there, you know, because I never had any interest before, because I did have like a sour taste in my mouth from it, and now rewatching them,
quite a bit longer too. I think it was like another half hour or so. So
it is.
There's got to be something in there.
Well, I know from I was talking to my friend who is even a bigger Tolkien nut than I am. And he was like, we're talking about this movie, and he likes these movies for the most part. And he goes, and he watched the extended editions all the time. He goes, yeah, but wasn't there like just, you thought there was too much Master and his like underling in Lake Town? I was like, there's barely any Master in Lake Town stuff. And he goes, oh, that must be the extended edition. So there must be a lot of it in there. So
all right, a little more Stephen Fry. I could live with that.
A little more Stephen Fry, yeah, more Stephen Fry. But yeah, I mean, that's really it. And that's why I said like I there's not too much thematically to talk about here. I think we'll talk about more sort of like summation thoughts about everything when we do the Battle of the Five Armies, you know, for this.
No, and I mean, there's really not even much to talk about business-wise, financially. This movie made money, just like the first one did. Yeah, it was a hit. It did what it needed to. You know, it wasn't like there was a huge drop-off like people saw in Unexpected Journey. I'm just like, nope, not in for any more of this.
Yeah.
So it's really, you know, it's very much the second part in a trilogy in that sense.
Yeah, it opened on the first one. It had a $73 million opening. It made $258 domestic, 700 international, 958 worldwide. You know, so like, you know, 50 million less than around 50 million less than the last one did, basically. You know, so it's like it did worse domestically, but it did better internationally, I believe, is kind of what happened with that. If I'm remembering correctly, I'm gonna check really quick to line it up. Yeah. So it did about 50 million less. Actually, did less on both, but it did a lot worse domestically compared to internationally on the drop off.
That's interesting.
Like domestically, it made the Unexpected Journey made 303, and this made 250. The next one made 258. So a little less than 50 million. And it made 715 worldwide. Unexpected Journey and Smaug made 700. So the percentages were different. Like the domestic percentage was a lot less of the total box office. But that was the way things were a lot more like that back then than they are now, obviously. But but even the next one, which it makes less for sure, is still going to do very well, So it's not like these movies are not going to drop off financially. I don't know if this one got any Oscar nominations for effects or anything like that. I'm going to look really quick. Oscar.
How could it not for Smaug? I'm pretty sure it did.
I'm sure it did. Desolation of Smaug awards. Let's see. It didn't win anything. It was nominated for sound mixing, visual effects, and sound editing were the things it was nominated for. So it did, but it did not win any Oscars. It was nominated for 3. So, so success still, it's one of those things where it did not get really too badly dinged. Obviously like I'd say probably the normie crowd fell off, and that's what makes up for the box office difference. But people who were there no matter what were going to be there no matter what for all of these movies. And that's sort of like what played out across these movies. Yeah, there's not a lot of business to talk about. So
this is can we talk about this for just a second as a Peter Jackson movie? Because that is kind of what we're here for. And this is a Peter Jackson movie. I mean, this is top tier, right? Like this is one of his better movies, I would say.
We're not doing rankings yet. I mean,
I know we're not. I just, in terms of because we talked about this already, like in some sense, this was not exactly done under duress, but it was in some sense work for hire or something. And the fact that it's as good as it is, like, what does that say about Peter Jackson?
He's a great director. I mean, that's the thing. Like it's talking about, like when you can feel that he has his footing, he really doesn't. There aren't many people who do things better than him.
I agree. And it feels like his heart's in this, even though it very easily could not be. He still cares about this world. He still cares about these characters. He still cares about these themes. And he's still just wanting to push the envelope and show us things we've never seen before. And I don't know. I was surprised how much I liked it. I knew it was good. I liked it a lot the first time. But I'm already looking forward to seeing this one again.
Absolutely. And one of the things this has done for me, I'll tell you right now, is it has made me go like, okay, when I show my son the Lord of the Rings movies, I'm not going to be dreading when he goes like, okay, now can we watch The Hobbit?
I agree.
Like I'm not going to have that feeling anymore. So I love that, that feeling so much, which I'm really, really happy about. Do I think it's one of his better movies? I mean, it's definitely in the top half. Like, I don't know if I'd put it, I don't know what I would, I mean, it's definitely better than, I don't know. I think it's like it's probably a little better than King Kong.
I think it's better than King Kong. Yeah, maybe that's what I was trying to get at. Like, it's as good as King Kong is in a lot of ways, and as much as I like that movie, this one kind of does almost everything that does and kind of does it better.
I agree with you on that for sure. Absolutely agree with you on that. I'm like looking at a list of the movies and trying to figure out how I would rank them. I'm obviously never going to talk about it, but yeah, I mean, I think so. I think it's in the top half. I mean, there are definitely movies of his that I like a lot more, but it is definitely in the discussion for like, I think it's an underrated Peter Jackson movie. Let's put it that way.
I agree with that. Yeah.
I think people, like we talked about, discount these movies in an offhand way that I think is unfair, and they prescribe things to them that I think aren't actually there. Quibbles and foibles I think aren't actually there. So I do agree that it deserves more credit than it gets, and I think there are things in this that people should look at and go like, you know what, if these action scenes were in a different movie, people would probably still be talking about them, and no one talks about these movies.
Well, that's what I think. That's it. Like, this is, people were comparing this to the Lord of the Rings trilogy, which is a very tough comparison to make, and I understand why you would do that. But like, if you put this up against other stuff made for these kinds of budgets, made for this kind of mass audience, big budget Hollywood blockbuster stuff, it's so much better than those movies. Like, it may not be better than Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings trilogy, but it's like light years past, your average, I want to call it a summer blockbuster. That's not really a thing anymore, which is pretty sad. But, like Vin Diesel made this movie called The Last Witch Hunter because he was really
sure did
D&D. And so he wanted to make like a fantasy epic kind of movie. And like, I will bet that that doesn't have like 1/100th of the creativity and the care that this movie has. You know, not that that movie was a hit either, but it was designed to be, you know, part of this like Lord of the Rings. It was a post Lord of the Rings fantasy movie that just didn't have, you know, the heart and the craft and the skill and the creativity that this one did. So, and there were so many of those. They did a Clash of the Titans remake. They did all of these movies, you know, particularly in that Avatar, you know, that 3D period when this comes out, that just they hold a candle to this one. And yeah, like now, like no one remembers those movies and people remember this movie and they don't like it. And it's like, no, go back and look at it again. Trust me.
He is definitely, I think, one of the only people who has been able to do modern fantasy well.
Agreed.
You know, he has a care for it and interest in it that I don't think a lot of other filmmakers do. You know, and I think obviously there was a big rush after after the original Lord of the Rings came out, you know, to start making fantasy movies, and some of them were successful and some of them weren't. But you know, you got a lot of what you're talking about, right? The Clash of the Titans, your Snow White and the Huntsmans, your you know, those type of movies, even like, you know, the Fantastic Beasts, you know, type of stuff, which are all, you know, disappointing in different ways. And I think that these movies are not disappointing in those ways. And yes, they have issues, but I think, like we've been saying, they are movies that are much better than people give them credit for. And hopefully, you know, we talked about, hoping they get readdressed in some ways and are able to, you know, find a little bit of reclamation than they have, and at least less discounting them off of hand, right?
Well, the more crap comes out, you know, now, the more we're going to look back at these like, oh, we didn't know how good we had it.
I just want him to make another movie. I just want that's all I want.
Whatever it is. Yeah. Whether it's something huge scale like this or more of a lovely bonesy heavenly creatures kind of thing.
Well, let's not go into lovely bonesy territory. Let's go back. Let's pull a Sam Raimi.
Well, maybe we could do it right the next time.
And do a little horror movie, you know, like do a little horror movie. That's what I want to see from you. Do your Drag Me to Hell or whatever this new one that Raimi's got coming out is called, which I don't remember what it's called.
That looks great, by the way.
Yeah. Like do your version of that, you know. But he's just busy, you know, bringing extinct birds back to life and making a 14-hour-long Beatle documentaries. So that's the way it is. Though I did watch all, whatever it was, 9 hours of that Beatles thing that he did.
How was it?
It was fantastic.
Yeah? Is he as good a documentary? I don't think I've ever seen any nonfiction films by Peter Jackson.
So I'd never seen that one he did before the Beatles one, that They Shall Never Grow Old, that World War I one that he did, where he like colorized all the World War I footage. I've never seen that one. But, you know, I don't know if he's a great documentarian because he didn't, you know, none of this footage is his. He's taking already existing footage. But what they're able to do, the thing that is so magical about it is just these moments where you're seeing these people who are almost mythical in people's minds, right? The Beatles, and just really making them seem so human in a way that I've never really seen before. And there really is, and you've probably seen on social media, there's that moment where Paul McCartney is just like sitting there bored between takes of this thing they're doing. And he just starts, he like writes "Let It Be," like basically. Also, he's trying to figure it out, and he's like, and he starts getting the melody down on the piano, and he starts humming it, you know. And then like George Harrison comes over, and like he's like, "Oh, what are you?" And he's like, "Oh, I'm doing this," and like George Harrison was like figuring out a guitar part for it, and it's like they're just like guys in a band, and it's just like, you know, the Beatles are so mythical and so obviously ever present and so influential that sometimes they don't feel that way, right? You know, obviously it goes all the way up to like when they do the rooftop concert, you know, and how that all came to pass and all the ways that it wasn't going to be that, like that was kind of like a last minute decision that they made and how they didn't publicize it. And like, you know, how McCartney was like, I really hope that the police come and try to break it up. And there's a moment where the police do come and they've got, you know, this filmmaker's got the cameras all over the place, and you see McCartney, and he's got this like devil smile on his face, and the cops try to come break up the thing. And it's just great, you know, just these great moments that happen. And a lot of it's to do with like modern technology. Like they were able to like, they said like a lot of this footage that was when the cameras were rolling, when they would have arguments or have conversations, they would on purpose have one of them be playing over them talking so that the filmmakers couldn't use what they were saying if the audio was going. But with modern technology, they're able to separate out like music from voice. So you're able to get all of these things that you're like, they never intended for anyone to ever hear, you know, just really interesting. Really shoots holes in the whole idea, right? That like everyone hated Yoko, all this kind of stuff. You see them all like hanging out with her and everything. It's most really you realize that like fucking Ringo was just like the chillest dude in the world, and that's why he survived all of it. Because he's just kind of sitting there being like, all right, I'm ready to go whenever we're done arguing about whatever we're arguing about. Like, I just want to play the drums, guys, you know? And how much they're how discounting there of George so much, especially Paul.
Is that right? He's my favorite Beatle. Oh,
George, yeah, I love George.
Big
but
George
like,
guy.
But, you know, George has all these ideas, wants all this stuff, and all of them, they're like, just play what we told you to play. It's basically sometimes like what comes out of it. And that's why he like leaves he like quits in the middle of everything and like won't come back for a while and all this kind of stuff. Really interesting. And there's like a conversation they captured between between Paul and John that they didn't know there was a microphone even there. And like, that's the first time anyone's ever heard it. And it was just very fascinating to hear it. And it really gets a sense that you're like, Paul McCartney seems like he was a pain in the ass to work with. Because he is constantly talking the whole time. He's like, we're the Beatles. Like, we have to, this has to be worthy of the Beatles. Like, that's all, he's constantly talking about that. And, you know, and John's just kind of like, hey, man, I just want to, like, play music. It's really fascinating. And, like, their engineer, this is the last thing I'm going to say, their engineer is, like, they're having trouble, like, you know, figuring out the album. Because they're just basically going to the studio and being like, I don't know, what do you got? And they're just, like, working stuff out. And the engineer's like, oh, yeah, I got to go mix another band, like, next week. I got to leave. And I'm like, this is like the end of the Beatles. Like, it's not like Beatles are the biggest band in the world. And this guy's the producer is like, I gotta like go do somebody else. Like, that would never happen now. Like, if the biggest artist, if Lady Gaga would like, you stay in there with Lady Gaga until she's done making her album, you know, or whatever, you know? So it's just very interesting. It's a very interesting thing. If you've got 7 hours or whatever to spend watching it.
I mean, I don't at the moment, but maybe eventually. I'm just going to stick with that one scene from Walk Hard for now, and that's going to be my Beatles documentary.
What a great scene. Underrated movie.
About an octopus. Yeah. That movie's fantastic. Yep.
Underrated movie. Speaking of underrated movies. But anyway, that's going to do it for our episode on the Desolation of Smaug, which we ended up talking about Walk Hard, which is obviously what every discussion about the Desolation of Smaug ends with. And please remember to rate, review, and subscribe. Next week, we're talking about The Hobbit, The Battle of the Five Armies, and we will end our Peter Jackson series. We'll rank his movies, and we'll announce what we're going to be doing next and when we'll be doing it. So because the format, not the format of the show, but the release cadence of the show is going to change a little bit. We're kind of changing up our ideas for how we're presenting the show. It won't really affect the content of the show. It's just kind of the way we're going to release it and how we're going to pick directors and stuff like that. But we'll talk about all of that next time. Until then, thank you, Nick.
Thank you, Bobby.
Thank you to everybody who is listening or watching. Until next time, be good to one another. Later.